Hello, everybody. Hope you are enjoying beautiful Aspen. I am very excited to welcome our keynote guest to discuss how his company is navigating through the entertainment industry's many changes. Please welcome the CEO and chairman of the Walt Disney Company, Robert Iger. It's a long walk.
It's a long walk. I'm out of breath.
It is high altitude. So, all right. So, like I said, we're very excited to welcome you here, and especially excited given how incredibly busy you've been. So, all CEOs have a crazy, unmanageable to-do list, I'm sure, but I'm just going to give a sample of what you've been dealing with in recent months. Some good, some bad, some interesting. So you recently opened a $5.5 billion new park in Shanghai. You dealt with a very tragic alligator attack in Orlando recently. You released Finding Dory, Captain America, Civil War, Zootopia, and The Jungle Book. You've now got 4 out of the 6 top grossing films of 2016. So a lot of launches. I'm not even getting into what you're doing on the new Star Wars movies and ESPN, which we'll get to later.
I'm not getting into that either.
Are you not? Okay. Well, you might get a few questions from the audience, not from me. But anyways, we appreciate you being here.
Pleasure.
Realize how busy you've been. Let's go back to Shanghai because that is one of the newest things that you guys have done. So you've called this the biggest step that the company has taken. Do you mean that in financial terms, or is it more than that?
Well, it's our largest ever foreign investment, one of the biggest investments we've ever made. I think I've said it's the biggest thing we've ever done in parks and resorts since Walt Disney bought.
We like to misquote, so.
That's all right. That's all right. But Walt amassed 30,000 acres of land in Florida in the '60s stealthily, which is a big deal, and he opened Disneyland in the '50s. This is a very big deal because of the scale, the potential that it represents, not just the business itself, but to Disney in China. And the challenges involved with, one, convincing the Chinese to let us bring Disneyland to China, and then amassing the land, designing it, building it right, doing everything necessary. And for me, it's written that it's 17 years of my life, which is true. It's actually 18 from the moment that I stepped foot on the property, set foot on the property to survey it for Disney to the day that we cut the ribbon was just about 18 years.
Wow.
A 10-year negotiation. That's a lot of patience.
So,
trying to teach my teenage boys the meaning of patience and tenacity and perseverance. I keep using that as an example.
So Bob was actually saying backstage that he actually has tennis elbow from shaking hands so much. So don't shake his hand if you see him afterwards. Just a fist bump, right?
Fist bump or a hug, kiss, whatever.
Yeah. So what was? I mean, explain the challenges because there were many, and obviously it took a long time. But from the negotiations to the technology behind it, building out. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I'd say after we did the deal, and there were a lot of challenges along the way involving a variety of different elements of a negotiation of that sort, including figuring out the partnership arrangement and governance and basically ownership and intellectual property and all of those things. First biggest set of challenges was, what do we build? What do we build that is right? I wanted very much to avoid being called a cultural imperialist. But more than that, I wanted to bring to China something that the people of China felt was theirs and not just something that was built for others in other parts of the world that brought there.
So is this why there's no Main Street USA in the Shanghai Resort?
Yeah, there are many elements that are typical for one of our parks that we eliminated here for that reason. Just didn't think they would resonate. Main Street USA is probably the best example because Walt built Main Street in Disneyland, and it was derived basically from or designed from the street that he grew up in Marceline, Missouri. So I didn't think that would resonate at all. In 2016, was that?
Missouri doesn't, small town Missouri doesn't
I didn't
translate
think
well
so.
to Shanghai.
I didn't think so. So there was building what was right, and I coined the phrase authentically Disney, distinctly Chinese. And that became the design mantra for our entire Imagineering team that designed it and built it. Then it was getting the 6 general contractors that we work with to build this gigantic park. Just to give you some scale, there are 100,000 people worked on this from groundbreaking to the time that we opened. And at many given times, there were 10,000 construction workers on property that we also housed and fed. So we built camps for them, give you also an idea of complexity and scale. We also build buildings that are not just cookie-cutter buildings where it's a 50 to 100-story building in every story building, and every story is the same. These were, complicated ride systems skinned with entertainment put into a building, and then the building was essentially adorned from the outside. So very complex. Even the steel structures that we demand for structures that I just described, much more complex. So that was very complicated. And it was, you also have you're on a world stage of sorts. There's something very historic about doing this. And we knew the world would be watching, which was the case. And we just wanted it to be really right. And fortunately, the opening was not only smooth, but it was extremely well received. Not just the excitement and the historic nature of it, but it was well received in terms of the number we've had.
How many people have been?
Well, it hasn't even been open for a month, and we haven't given a number out, but I think it would be safe to assume there have been almost 1 million people that have experienced the park. And we have guest satisfaction, as we call it, ratings, and we know that, and I can't disclose all of it, but they really like it. And one reason we know is they're staying 2 hours longer per day, per visit than we expected. Wow. And they're enjoying the rides, the entertainment. There's a lot of entertainment, a lot of shows. The hotels are well booked, and the food is selling very well.
The dim
sum. You know
sum.
the most popular food that is being sold is a Chinese barbecued pork with rice. But the second most popular are cheeseburgers, and the third are turkey legs.
Well.
Turkey legs in a Asian sauce that we developed.
Wow. So you still have the big turkey legs.
We decided we would introduce turkey legs to China, which I thought was a mistake, but we're selling 3,000 a day.
Was there a big discussion on this?
It wasn't a discussion. We have a gentleman who runs the food program. I get pretty involved in what the restaurant menus are, multiple restaurants. And we basically agreed that about 70% of the food would be Chinese and 20% would be other Asian foods or cuisines, and about 10% American, which included pizza, hamburgers, and then they snuck in churros and turkey legs. And I didn't know that the turkey legs would sell as well as they did. They're 55 RMB, about $10 a pop. And I got there, and there's one venue for turkey legs, and as soon as we opened, a line would form. And they told me they were selling 3,000 a day.
Wow.
We're sourcing them from Poland.
This is not the direction
this is the kind of thing, I know this is a tech conference, but just think of all the technology involved.
Of sourcing turkey. We should have your supply chain person up here, because that would be fascinating. Sourcing turkey legs from Poland. Okay, so going back to technology. So give us like 1 or 2 examples of something that went into, a technology that went into Shanghai that has not been in any other park.
Most of the technology to build it, has not been used before. So, and that included doing some design work from Imagineering in Glendale, and basically some virtual reality experiences where I'd go into a volume and experience walking through the gates, and actually rode rides from Glendale in simulators, and we did a lot of that. And basically the building design and the initial communication to the contractors and local architects was basically communicated through technology. And then we ended up with hard drawings, which there were, 300,000 physical shop drawings. We also used technology in almost all of the entertainment, but this is the most technologically advanced park that we've ever built, obviously because it's the most modern. But I can give you 3 instances. First of all, Pirates of the Caribbean, which we decided to put there. But what we're doing in Pirates is taking a lot of the visuals that ILM from Lucasfilm provided us. We're truly immersing you in not just the ride, but in the movies. So this is derived from the movies. And as one example, first of all, the ride vehicles, instead of being tethered to something underwater, are on magnets that move underwater. And that gives us the ability to turn the boats around. They can go sideways. They can go backwards. We can moderate the speed, as a for instance. But we also simulate the feeling of sinking. You're basically immersed in a room that is an IMAX room, where when you look up, by the time you sink, you look up and there are fish swimming above you. And you get a real feeling that you're sinking. So there's a lot of technology involved, but there's huge media in the space, all delivered obviously with technology. We have a coaster that is based on light cycles in Tron, and they're the most sophisticated vehicles that we've ever built.
And your fastest roller coaster today?
Fastest roller coaster, that obviously takes technology, but you're not seat belted into something that catapults you out of a building at 60 miles an hour. And that takes it takes technology and takes a lot of guts. But the vehicles themselves have trigger mechanisms in them that trigger light, sound, music along the track as you go by. And they also have very high-end audio on each vehicle and with significant bass to play, Tron music, so that it feels right. And then a lot of the entertainment, we have a nighttime show at the castle, which is essentially high-end projection onto a castle that's been very carefully mapped digitally. So, and we have, I don't know how many high-end projectors, there are probably about a dozen that project images on a castle at night, but they actually project images on each surface of the castle, all digitally mapped, so that we can design basically a movie, the equivalent of a movie experience on a very, very large, very, very multi-dimensional physical surface, which is quite different. So those are three examples.
So let me ask you a question, and I want to get to ESPN and some other topics and also take a few questions from you guys. But you mentioned VR and some of the technologies that you use in the park. And I know you guys have, Lucasfilm now has a partnership with Magic Leap, which you're a fan of. What happens when you can have these experiences at home? Like, I can sit at home and I can feel like I'm at Shanghai Disney. How does that affect your business?
Well, I think that might be an example that would probably be used as more of a marketing technique than a product that would simulate a theme park experience in full. I think that would have limitations, less so than ever before. But there's nothing more powerful, or the combination of storytelling and technology is extremely powerful. If you think back to Walt Disney, what he did with a multi-plane camera and creating backgrounds for some of his early movies that seemed dimensional and real. Or you think about what George Lucas did with Star Wars, what John Lasseter and Ed Catmull did with Pixar and really evolved digital animation. You think about what Jim Cameron did with Avatar. I think that using technology, whether it's Magic Leap, which certainly would be a great example of that, to tell stories in much more compelling ways is very exciting. And to tell more stories in different places, making characters and stories come alive in a child's bedroom, for instance, very, very exciting. And one of the experiments that Magic Leap is doing with ILM is, I think, something called Trials in Tatooine, Tatooine being a place.
I think everyone here knows what that is. Come on. Know your audience.
So you can, sorry, I don't know. But you can imagine taking a walk in Tatooine and interacting with Star Wars characters. Where it gets complicated is rendering stories in real time and being able to focus a consumer's attention on a certain element of the story. But it's definitely, that will all happen. It will all evolve. Parks, I think, will probably stick to the great immersive experience that actually going to a physical place and enjoying that experience with a few, maybe 100,000 of your friends at one time, after waiting on a line for a few hours.
Yeah.
But I think that there are all kinds of ways that we'll use technology like that to expand our storytelling. And they did something for me recently, which we kept sort of secret to my group because they weren't ready to show it to everyone, but they took Tinkerbell. I'm a big fan of the character Tinkerbell.
Who knew?
We're
learning so many interesting things tonight.
But I stood in a room and they had Tinkerbell basically flying around me, flying right up to me and around me, and looking untethered, extremely real. I mean,
Wow.
very, very real, so much so, I thought that I could touch the character
Wow.
flying right in front of me.
This is Magic Leap you're talking
The
about.
Magic Leap did that. That starts to get very, very exciting when we think about what kind of stories we could tell there.
And by the way, Ronnie from Magic Leap is somewhere here in the room. Raise your hand. He's here really, not just in MR, right? Yeah, that's really him. So you have seen so many amazing things. I mean, I've had the pleasure of going to Imagineering and seeing probably a fraction of what you actually get to experience and see being the CEO. But on a scale of 1 to 10, the Tinkerbell experience, in terms of the wow factor, 10 being the greatest, what was it?
Well, the experience itself was easily a 10, but the wow factor is imagining what you could do with it next.
Yeah.
Soon after we bought Pixar, and I sat with all the animators of Pixar and John Lasseter and all of their technology people, it was really clear that the technology people constantly, the storytellers and the animators constantly challenged the technology people to come up with technology to enable them to tell their stories in more compelling ways. At the same time, the technology people created technology that inspired the storytellers to tell even more expansive stories, to tell stories in different ways. And there was sort of a yin-yang and an unbelievable connection they both had. So when I think of Magic Leap, I think of Disney. We're inherently, I know it sounds trite, but we're inherently a storytelling company that has embraced technology from the very beginning, from Walt's day, to tell better stories to more people in more places, in more ways. It's that simple. And that culture has, I think, set us apart for the 90-plus years that we've been in existence. But it also guides a lot of our investment strategy as well. So while we invest primarily in, I'll call it intellectual property creation, and that can be everything from a theme park attraction to a movie to a TV show, we invest with that intellectual property creation or the storytelling in the technology that is necessary, whatever it will take to tell that story in a better way,
Okay,
to reach more people using the technology. So I know every once in a while we get criticized for calling ourselves a technology company. We're not primarily a technology company, but I think when you think about the storytelling companies that have existed in the world, we're probably, we've been the most aggressive at investing in and using technology and embracing it as part of our storytelling, as part of our culture.
And
I'm proud of that.
You've been ingrained in that for a long time. You sit on the Apple board. Steve Jobs was on the Disney board. You now have Jack Dorsey, Sheryl Sandberg, and several other technology company executives on the Disney board. I want to switch gears a little bit and also go to you guys in just a couple of minutes, but on the ESPN side, because if you're talking about technological transformation, there's definitely a lot of that going on in the sports world. So you had phenomenal ratings for several live sporting events recently. The NBA Finals was the highest rated, I think, on ABC or ESPN since 2006. At the same time, there's been a slight slip in subscriber numbers on the ESPN side. So how do you think about what's going on? Is this an exciting time to be in the sports broadcasting business? Is it a challenging time?
I think I actually spent 13 years of my career at ABC Sports working for a guy named Maroon Arledge, who was known as someone who embraced technology, and he adopted slow motion and rear angle camera and live satellite technology, et cetera, and so on. So, and he was quite inspirational to me. I think this is the most exciting time in sports media for a variety of reasons. It starts with the power of live. And the power of sports, and the power of the brand ESPN. But live and sports today has never been more popular. And then when you think about technology and just what I was talking about, first of all, the technology that can be now used to tell this, we don't tell the sports story as much as we show the story. Sometimes we tell it, but if you talk to Draymond Green, who's here, he'd say, well, he tells the sports story, and we cover him telling that story. But the technology that is now available to us to do that is unlike any we've ever had before, and that makes the experience of watching the sport I think even better. Secondly, just think about the different places you can now consume sports. So you talk about losing some subs or ratings being down. We had the highest number of people streaming Game 7 of the NBA Finals than we've ever had before. And what's great about the technology that's available today, particularly mobile technology, and the technology that enables us to stream at a higher quality without the interruption and basically a better fan experience, it's unbelievably exciting. You know, the number of people, yesterday I didn't get home in time to watch the Portugal-France match. I got home to watch.
Yeah.
You don't want me to talk
You
about
didn't. No, you didn't miss much. I was going to say, but
I thought it was, well, I got home in time to see the overtime periods, but I was in a place where people were watching on iPhones all over the place. That's incredible, because back in my day, if you wanted to watch something on sports, you had to go home and watch it on a fixed television set on a wall, or you had to go to a sports bar, those that existed back then. Now you can watch wherever you are. And when you think of, by the way, some of the technology that Ronnie's invested in and that others invested in, you'll put some kind of glasses on and you'll just look up and there'll be a gigantic screen in front of you with an ESPN, hopefully an ESPN live sporting event on. So I think it's a great time to be in that business. I think we're going through a transition that involves the distribution side of that business, but one that I'm convinced that, since sports is so great, I mean, you can't, when you think about storytelling, you can't tell a better story than the NBA Finals. 7 games, the team that won the most games ever, Draymond probably doesn't want me to talk about this, but breaks the record for the most games, has a guy who wins the most valuable player award unanimously, playing LeBron James, rematch of the series the year earlier, goes to Game 7, no idea what the outcome is, goes down to the last shot of the game. That's a great story. So I think you think about content and IP, fantastic. And fortunately, we have the NBA rights for a long time.
yes, and you're paying for it. You're paying a lot of money for it.
We're paying a lot of money, but I think for a good reason. It says a lot. You pay money for things that are of value that other people want. So we're paying a lot of money for very good reason.
But just real quick, you mentioned being able to watch wherever you are, right? But really a pure direct-to-consumer play for you guys on the ESPN side. You've said that is coming. And I think a lot of us just assume that that's really good because that's what consumers want, right? Because we're used to Netflix and all of that on-demand streaming. But what does that do to the model? Because there's so much, the whole ecosystem, the sports business, the leagues, and the bundle, and you talk a lot about skinny bundles, which sounds like a Starbucks drink, but what does that do to this whole entire big ecosystem?
We're seeing change in media, and it's mostly powered by technology, and it's powered by the shift that technology has created away from the distributor and the producer to the consumer. The consumer has much more authority than ever before to decide what they want to watch, when they want to watch it, where they want to watch it, even how much they pay for it. We're already seeing that in so many other ways. Just think about Amazon, the consumers. You mentioned Netflix is another example. It's just a changing world. And with that changing world, the business models that form the underpinning of many of our businesses are changing with that changing world. And we're not going to be able to stop it. Our priority would be for the multi-channel bundle to remain vibrant and vital and of value to more consumers. And I think it's probably safe to assume that it will be the most popular choice for most people for a long period of time. However, for a new generation of people, my boys are 13 and 17, and I have daughters in their 30s. By the way, the equivalent is they don't have a hardwired phone. I know that's not new, but it's just about mobile phones. My boys probably will, at least in their early adult life, will probably seek out their own media in different ways, meaning they're going to want more flexibility, they're going to want much better navigation. That's really important. Customer access, ease of use, better navigation, being able to find things, vital. And new platforms offer that better than the legacy platforms that existed. People also want, when we talk about choice, I think the old world choice meant a lot of things. Choice today means let me decide what I want, meaning let me customize my package, let it be customized or personalized for me, and we're going to see that transition. So for us, first thing we ask ourselves is, do we have products that people will want, no matter what the delivery mechanism is. And when you think about Disney and you think about ESPN, think about Pixar, you think about Marvel, you think about Star Wars, we have that, no matter what the distribution system is. And when you think about being able to go direct to consumer, we have the ability to go direct to consumer with a lot of that product. There are contractual issues that we have to deal with near term. There are business issues. We know that there's disruption. We probably will participate in or become a catalyst for some of the disruption. But we don't want to disrupt too far ahead of it all because it's still very valuable to us. And again, we hope the multi-channel bundle lives forever. But I think it's safe to assume that there will be more choice will be necessary to keep our consumers happy. And one, I think, example of that will be some kind of direct-to-consumer model from us directly to consumers, which will give us access to who they are, what their data is, et cetera, and so on.
So we're out of time, but I want to take one very quick question from the audience. I think Draymond Green has a question for you, and he's out here somewhere. Can you stand up? You have a microphone coming to you.
I purposely didn't show highlights of Game 7.
So my question is, like, I'm really into real estate as well, and like strip malls and all those things are doing as great as they've ever done. And then you have like LA Live, and our owners are now building an arena where they're building these fan experiences. When you look at Toronto, they have a bunch of people out in the park watching their game on one big screen. How is that going to affect who's buying what you're selling? Because if everybody's just looking for these fan experiences, then all of a sudden people stop getting cable, they stop streaming, and they're just going to these places to get the fan experience. So how are you going to get to the consumer through those channels if everybody's looking for that one experience?
That's a really good question. It's interesting. Another example is what happens in Dallas. You know, Jerry Jones built a football stadium in Dallas where the experience on that gigantic screen is unbelievable. Now, it's mostly for people who have bought tickets to the games, but you're seeing, particularly with screen technology, you're seeing more and more of that. We used to complain about out-of-home viewing, people going to sports bars and watching and not getting counted by Nielsen when we measured traditional TV ratings. One of the biggest challenges that we have right now is getting accurate data on any digital program consumption that is not a pay-per-view experience. So even when we stream ESPN, there's a Watch ESPN app on an iPhone or an iPad or whatever, getting the data that we need to basically monetize it has become more and more difficult. And the bigger you get in terms of size of the screen, number of people, the more challenging that becomes. We're told, there are experiments going on right now, but we're told that measuring such things is going to get easier as time marches on, so that ultimately we'll be able to get paid or we'll be able to monetize in more ways. But right now, there's no question that all of the out-of-home experiences that involve some kind of digital experience, whether it's on a small screen or on a gigantic screen, are basically under-monetized. More consumption, less monetization. And that is something we've got to figure out. Absolutely. I like the idea of, in fact, we're enabling it. When the last time we had World Cup, which was the last time we're going to have the World Cup for a while because we got outbid for the rights, but the last World Cup we did, we had big screens up in a variety of different places. Times Square, we had trucks driving around Los Angeles with it. It was all basically marketing to create big fan experiences. We weren't really getting paid much for any of that. So it's definitely an issue. And there'll be more and more of that coming.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. We didn't get to a lot of other topics, but maybe you'll come back next year and the year after, because you've got like 10 more years at Disney, right? So thank you so much. I'm not going to shake your hand. Thank you. I'll see you out there.